What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason and Joe here. It is time for another deep dive week. The last one we did was 1980. This time we are hitting 1995. If you're new to the channel, back at the beginning, when we first started the channel, there were three of us, and we had a series called Albums of the Year, where we each chose our top five albums of each year from 65 up to present day. But we felt like that didn't give us enough time or chances to talk about all the albums that we like from all these years. So we're going deeper lists now. And we're also spending several months listening to as much as we can from the years to, try to explore some stuff that we're unfamiliar with. So this is our list at the end of several months of listening to music from 1995. I found 95 to be deeply disappointing. I think I actually like this year less than 1998, which has been your least favorite year for a long time. And I thought it was one of my least favorite years of the 90s, but I came up with nothing here for 95. I got only two new listens in my top 25 and tons of like three and sub 3 star records that I listened to. So I found it to be pretty vacant.
I also wasn't crazy about this year. I don't know. There's a lot of like big name albums that you're gonna find like not 4 stars. I have them, high 3.5 stars. I think they're fine, but honestly, like for such a well thought of year and for such well thought of albums, I don't know, they don't do it for me. I ended up with a lot of like new albums on my list because I really hadn't listened to that much from 1995 to begin with, coming in, pretty much just the big names. So it's a very odd list. I think people are really going to hate most of my list until we get to like the top five, and then it's good. But everything else, people are gonna be like, well, where's this? Well, where's this? Well, maybe I just don't like that entire genre. And the 90s, every album is too long, and I've discovered that I think almost every like hyped album from the decade is probably overhyped. Other than, I mean, at the very top, it is super good, and I love the top, 9 or 10, and then everything after that, I just do not really care about. So we shall see. I like it better than 98, but like I don't know, it's probably with like the 2000s and 2010 years, probably just like fine, but like it really doesn't thrill me, and I don't see the what all the hype is about.
Yeah, like I'm known as like a major 80s hater. And if you look through my favorite albums of all time, I think you would see much more stuff from the 90s. But as far as like doing these dives, like they're even less fun for me because like the stuff that I do like I seem to already know. At least in the 80s, like I can dig around and find some stuff. But yeah, I was 11 years old in 1995, so I was aware of most of what was going on at that point, and yeah, so there's n not as many surprises.
Well, I wasn't aware of anything because I was only listening to Weird Al at the time, but I'm still, just not all enthused. So I really don't feel like I missed that much.
All right, well, let's get into it. My number 25, I'll kick us off, is a record that I think most people don't like, and I have always thought it was pretty good and interesting, and that is Lucy by Candlebox. It is their second album. I think it's pretty much considered like a true sophomore slump type record. They had some big hits and songs that you still hear to this day on like alternative rock radio stations. Apparently, Simple Lessons got some radio play according to the internet, but I don't remember ever hearing it, and it certainly doesn't get played anymore. The first Candlebox record had like this bluesy classic rock sound. It was kind of like in the Pearl Jam vein of grunge, where you had these kind of like bluesy solos and stuff. And this one is far more punky and garagey. It feels a little rushed and underdeveloped, but I kind of like that about it. Like there's this urgency that I think works for this record, and it's a record that I think people haven't given enough time to because I think it is a grower. I think the songs stick with you the more you hear them. And I'm a big fan of Kevin Martin's vocals. I think he's a really underrated singer from this era. So, 4 stars for quite a while before we get to the 4.5s. But Lucy,
Okay, that's one I didn't listen to because I don't know. I've never heard anyone say something nice about it, but there we go. Maybe I should have. My number 25 is an album. I don't think it gets as much love from the people as it does from the critics. And the critics all seem to love it. And that is Me Against the World by Tupac. And, I'm not the biggest rap fan. I think we all recognize that. But I'm coming to realize that a lot of that is I just don't like that kind of East Coast sound. The rap that's just basically all like samples and little drum hits and just the sparse rap. I'm not a big fan of. I like me some big pop rap. I mean, the popular rap of the 90s, the Biggie Smalls, the Tupac Shakurs. I just find it better produced, more interesting, fuller, richer. I like the G-Funk sound. I like the West Coast sound a lot more than that kind of underground New York stuff that was going on that everyone seems to love now. But I just can't get into it. Give me Tupac, which I don't even feel like I'm out on a limb with this because if you look at like the professional rap reviewers, they all think this is great. Like the Tupac, the Notorious B.I.G., but I didn't really hear anyone talking about Tupac, Me Against the World, and he's kind of, underrated on RYM and stuff like that. But I love just his sound, the way he sounds when he raps. I think he just does a great job of being sort of menacing, but also vulnerable. And I mean, I just like the music behind him a lot more. The big funky bass lines, the synth hits. It's just to me a lot more interesting in a full sound, and I will always kind of gravitate towards that rap over the sparse stuff. So, in a year where I just couldn't find that much to love, I do think Me Against the World by Tupac stood out. You got Dear Mama and So Many Tears, a couple big singles, and some of the lesser known cuts are pretty sweet too. Can You Get Away? I thought was really good. So it's 4 stars. It's 25. Me Against the World, Tupac.
number 24 for me is Tragic Kingdom by No Doubts. This is at least partially a nostalgia pick. This is one that I had on CD in 1995. I remember seeing them on, I think it was like the VMA pre-show, playing either Spiderwebs or Just a Girl. So I was into them at the time, and I wasn't sure coming back to it how well this would hold up. Haven't even heard the singles recently, I don't feel like. So yeah, it was kind of like a blast from the past listening to this, and with all that's gone on with Gwen and questionable decisions she's made recently, I didn't really know how I'd feel about this, but I think overall it holds up really well. It's a little long, like most 90s records are, could probably cut a track or two, but I do think even beyond the singles, there's a bunch of deep cuts that I like a lot, and I think the performances are good, and I like Matthew Wilder's production, famously of Break My Stride. Yeah, it's pretty solid. I was a little surprised how much I enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Probably be on my list somewhere. We'll see. My number 24, an album. I guess I wasn't too high on it in our Foo Fighters ranking, but the Foo Fighters debut is getting on my list here in 95. It's, for a band now that's known for kind of their slick rock sound, this one's pretty scrappy. It's just Dave Grohl, Dave Grohl alone, kind of emerging from the very large shadow of Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. And it just sounds like he was recording stuff in his basement. He's got a lot of good melodies, a lot of good song ideas. He just kind of throws them all on a disc, you know, and just good stuff. Big Me was a good one. This is a call. Some, you know, some good variety, some big, powerful rockers and some stripped back stuff. And you know, even if you don't like Dave Grohl now, I think almost everyone likes this because it's not what people consider, Foo Fighters. But sounds like it was recorded in a basement. It's good stuff.
My number 23 is Different Class by Pulp, also at 4 stars. I think if you've watched this channel by now, you probably know that Britpop is not my favorite 90s genre or movement. And I think even though I do like a lot of Pulp, I think they're probably more of a songs band than like a band whose albums I really love. But, if you take a bunch of like pretty good to great songs and put a bunch of them on the same album, at a certain point, the album becomes pretty good as well. So that's kind of how I feel about this. Glammy, it's kind of like disco pop rock, good production from Chris Thomas. Classic Jarvis Cocker storytelling throughout, funny lyrics, great delivery. Common People, one of my favorite Britpop songs overall from all of those bands. You've also got Disco 2000, Underwear, Misshapes, Pencil Skirt, Bar Italia, all songs that I consider very good. And yeah, Different Class, good stuff. I think it was my second or third, second favorite Pulp record, but yeah, very good.
Sounds like it should be a little higher on your list after all the nice things you said about it. So we'll see what's above it. My number 23, I'm gonna go with An Out Come the Wolves from Rancid, which is a very fun record. You got that big blast of like Clash energy from Tim Armstrong and company. The ska, the punk, good diversity in the sound. It's one of those albums. There's 19 tracks, and it's just there should be 12. If it was 12 songs, it could be like 4.5 stars. But it goes on too long, kind of runs out of steam. But I mean, it kicks off so strongly with Maxwell Murder. That bass line from Matt Freeman is just one of the one of the best I think I've ever heard. I love it. I always used to try and play it, and I cannot. I can play a lot of things on the bass, but I could never quite get that one. And then you got Time Bomb, Ruby Soho, just that kind of classic spirit with an updated punk ska sound. And it's a very fun album from Rancid.
Number 22 for me, I've got 100% Fun by Matthew Sweets, an album that comes out of the gate so ridiculously hot, it's almost unfair to the rest of the record. Sick of Myself is an all-timer, just a great killer tune, killer Richard Lloyd guitar work all over it. Then you get Not When I Need It is I think that's a great ballad. We're the Same. Shortly after that, also great. There's other good stuff on this record too, but not quite enough to surpass Girlfriend as the best Matthew Sweet record, and not quite enough good like great stuff to get to 4.5 stars. And it's a little ballad heavy for an album called 100% Fun, but the highs are so ridiculously high. Just great stuff there. So yeah, I like Matthew Sweet a lot. I think he's a good songwriter. I think the way he made his records early on with those great guitar players was really cool, and I think the way he records harmonies with himself and stuff is always really ear candy. So, yep, 22, 100% fun.
My number 22, I'm going back to the rap well for another album that's very sort of middle of the road kind of rap. Two big singles from it, I think everybody knows. I'm going with 1999 Eternal from Bone Thugs in Harmony. And a lot of rap groups have Bones and Thugs, but not a lot of rap groups have the harmony that Bone Thugs and Harmony have. It's just, again, a lot of it comes down to just the way these people rap. And Bone Thugs has like this sing-songy delivery, so that even when they're rapping, like they're doing like this unison thing, they're trading back and forth. It's really fast, but they have almost like a melodic flow that is like a harmony singing, and it's just really cool and unique. Um, the production, very West Coast again, so that definitely plays into it. for why I like it. Even though they're from Cleveland, their mentor was Eazy-E, so they had that West Coast spirit to them. And it's just one of those albums. I don't know. I think it holds up really well, and I think all the performances on it are really good. And it has First of the Month, which is a classic, and it has Crossroads, which is one of my favorite rap tunes as well. And some of the other stuff, East 1999, pretty solid too. There's too many skits and stuff, and it's 800 minutes long or whatever. But I think it holds up pretty well. And another one that just, I don't know. You don't hear, it doesn't get a lot of love lately, but I don't know. Something about that sort of poppy rap just does it for me over the other stuff.
Right, well, you're going hip hop, and I am going country with Gone by Dwight Yoakam at number 21. This was Dwight's sixth album. Dwight was one of my favorite catalogs that we've ever done on the channel. This was actually only my number nine Dwight Yoakam album, still 4 stars. And it was considered like his experimental record at the time. It came after his huge hit record this time, which sold like 3 million records, and then this one sold like a tenth of that. And it was a big disappointment. And I guess country fans, it was just like too weird for them, even though it's not weird at all. It's still mostly the same sort of thing, country throwback. There's a few new sounds here to keep it fresh and interesting, but I think that's a good thing, not something that should make your career fall apart. So, yeah, I think he's extremely underrated, even in terms of like names you hear brought up when people talk about 90s country. Yeah, Dwight should be high, high, high on that list. And yeah, it's a solid record.
Hi, 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 if not number one on the list, as far as I'm concerned for 90s country. I was pretty disappointed by pretty much all the country albums I listened to in 1995, except one that'll come later. My number 21, R.I.P., our great Dark Lord, Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, with Osmosis. And I think it's pretty impressive. This is 25 years after the Black Sabbath debut. Ozzy's still, I think, kicking ass. And this is probably the last time he really got the formula right in his solo records. Uh, but it's a great formula. It's got the stompers, the ballads, a couple songs outside his usual bent, some filler, some cringe. It's got everything an Ozzy album should have. Kicks off with Perry Mason, which is the big stomper, the rip roaring hard rock. It's got, See on the Other Side, and I Just Want You, the good ballads, Old LA Tonight, and Amy sort of outside his usual, although I guess Amy's a bonus track, but I'm still going to count it. It's kind of like, No More Tears, but a little less. But No More Tears kind of kicks ass, so I'm not complaining. I think, Zach Wild, pretty fun guitarist, even if he does pinch harmonics too much. And this one also had Geezer Butler playing bass and Dean Castronovo on drums. So it's an all-star lineup, and I think the songs are just good enough, and Ozzy's just good enough to, get to a nice, solid, comfortable 4 stars.
I too will be talking about that one in a bit. Right now, my number 20, this is one of my two new listens, and I think you'll be proud of me for including the self-titled Ben Folds 5 at number 20. I don't think I'd really heard any of the songs from this record before. Of course, I'm familiar with, Brick and some of the hits that Ben Folds 5 had, and then, familiar probably with even more of his more recent stuff just from listening to so much new music in recent years. But yeah, this one was a total blind spot. It sounds exactly how I expected a Ben Folds 5 debut record to sound in 1995. You got that big pounding piano sound, fat bass, high energy performances, unfussy production, but with a much higher consistency of good songs than I expected. I think pretty much throughout, songwriting is really strong. Like I said, I'm familiar with later records, and the later records aren't this consistent. So, yeah, I thought it was full of good melodies and yeah, really was shocked at how much it held me through the entire runtime.
Very good, very good, very proud. We'll be talking about that one a lot later for me, but um, I imagine you'll have this B band on your list. At some point, I got Blind Melon with Soup, and I spent 25 years thinking I didn't like this album because I heard it once when I was 15, I think, and I just didn't like it. I don't know why I didn't like it. I don't really remember it. I wasn't like a big, Blind Melon fan. I was like, oh, they went away from the B song sound on this one or anything like that. I didn't really like it. But I listened to it this week for the first time, or this month, or whenever I listened to it for the first time in, 25 years basically, and I thought it was very good. I was kind of shocked at how much I liked it, especially after like reading the reviews and seeing like the 1.5 stars that Rolling Stone gave it, which is just one of the worst reviews I've ever said. I actually have it saved somewhere. I'll have to dig it out and put it on Instagram or something because it's just so terrible. But I thought it was a very interesting, like very eclectic sounding album. Um, you know, More tuneful than I remember. For some reason, I thought it was kind of dry when I listened to it in 1999 or whatever it was. But I thought it was very tuneful, very unique sounding, very eclectic. Just an interesting album, pretty much all the way through, with some good melodies and some pretty parts, and yeah, just a very solid kind of I don't know if there's like a big like single that stands out to me, but I thought pretty much from front to back it was just a good album.
Love to see it. My number 19 is Grand Prix by Teenage Fan Club. And, for many Teenage Fan Club fans, this is like number one, number two, maybe number three. I think I put it like number eight when I did my Teenage Fan Club ranking. It is not one of my favorite records of theirs, but I just like them so much that even a record that I consider one of their lesser efforts to be very good. Yeah, for me, this is like their first really like move away from the distortion of earlier records. Bandwagon-esque and 13 had like the tunefulness of this, but a lot of like heavy guitars. And here they just like really lean into the pop side of their sound. And I think later on they get better at that and just get better at making those arrangements sound more interesting. So here I do think that it's just not quite as exciting sounding. It's a little flat to me, but the writing's really good. The melodies are very strong. The singing is very good. And there's some classic Teenage Fan Club songs here. About You and Sparky's Dream, great 1-2 punch to open the record. Neil Young or Neil Young or however you want to pronounce it, Young with a J, is excellent too. And yeah, it's not a slight against this record that I rank it lower in their catalog. It's just a testament to how much I like Teenage Fan Club. And yeah, if you like tuneful uh, power pop, I guess, that's a little light on the power and just kind of sweet melodies, this is a great one to check out.
Well, all right, my number 19. I wasn't ex This is a new listen for me for this month. This dive. I'm going with a little power metal, which I wasn't expecting. Because I really have never gotten too deep into power metal. It's kind of just always seemed a little too silly for me. And that's saying a lot considering it's me. But I was very pleasantly surprised by Imaginations from the Other Side by Blind Guardian. And I'm by no means an expert on the band or anything like that, but it wasn't too cheesy. And that's kind of what turned me on. Fleming Rasmussen, the famed Metallica producer who did all their 80s stuff, is the producer here. So it's got like that speed metal influence as well as the power metal. So, but it's not like all Lord of the Rings stuff. So that's good. It's not too cheesy. They do break into some sort of Renaissance music style, British folk. There's a couple of songs with acoustic guitar and one with lute and whatever. But I think they do a good job of mixing it all up, not getting too kind of lame, and still bringing, the big riffs, the big, power metal, just whatever. I don't even know how to describe power metal, just the ridiculousness of it all, with the over singing and the overplaying. I don't find it too ridiculous on this album. So I enjoyed it, Blind Guardian. Imagine from the other side. I feel like if you just want to dip your toe into power metal, this is a good place to start. But
Back to back blind bands.
that's odd.
Number 18 for me, this is my other new listen. So, this is my favorite find of the deep dive, and it is Life by the Cardigans. I listened to their 1998 album. I think it's called Gran Turismo or something like that, and hated it. Did not like it, and disliked it so much that I almost skipped this one. I felt like on that one they were trying to like add electronic and rock elements, like they were trying to sound like garbage or something, and it just did not work for me at all. But here, this is closer to like what I thought the Cardigans were, which was, that loveful sound, that like twee poppy ness. And yeah, that's basically what you get here. It's cutesy, highly melodic, reminds me of like future groups like Allo Darlin and Camera Obscura. Great melodies, a lot of like early 60s kitschiness to it that's a lot of fun as well. And yeah, it was just like a easy breezy, sweet, poppy confection, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay. Still in the 4 stars for me as well. I don't know if I've mentioned that. This is another new listen. I don't think anyone on this channel or watching has ever listened to a song by this band. So this one kind of came out of nowhere. It's odd because it sold 1.3 million copies in its first week, and you've probably never heard of them. They're called Bees. B apostrophe Z. They're from Japan. It's pop rock. It's a ridiculous sounding album for 1995. There's a couple tracks on here. One in particular, it's called Love Me, I Love You. And in parentheses, it says with G bass. And I think he's a guitarist or something. It sounds like you combined, but seriously, Phil Collins and like New Jersey album Bon Jovi, and then got like Steve Vai to play guitar on it. It is so like over the top, just ridiculous. It's kind of like if City Pop was transported into the 90s. So that's probably why I like it. It's just everything is taken to 11, just insane, just absolutely insane. The album's not all like that, but like it's kind of like Phil Collins with the Phoenix Horns and Bon Jovi kind of mashed up. So if that sounds horrible, which I'm sure it will to many people, don't listen to it. But if that sounds interesting, check out Bees, and the album is Loose. And it came out and sold 1.3 million copies in its first week, which is insane. Like that's in sync numbers. And I don't think I've ever heard them mentioned ever. So it's interesting, fun to find new stuff. I think it has like 12 album ratings on RYM, so it's like just completely lost to time, despite it being. I think Bees is like the biggest band in Japan's history. So it's just one that never quite translated, even though this is very easy to consume pop rock, hair metal type stuff. So it's not like weird stuff that you would, not expect American audiences, English ears to get. It's a lot of fun. Check it out.
Well, easy to consume is why it's not big on RYM. They like to have their music very
They
difficult.
like city pop though. I mean, it's not. It's just like city pop for a different decade.
My number 17 is a record that I expect to see even higher on most people's 95 lists. I've got Post by Bjork at number 17. And it's perhaps a little similar to The Pulp and Matthew Sweet in that I think it's a record that's like carried by its best stuff. And even though there's nothing on it that I really dislike, I don't think it's among her best albums. I think the records that she did immediately after Post are significantly better and work better as like cohesive sets of songs. And this one is like really all over the place and kind of jerks you around from style to style, which is, maybe the point, but for me, it doesn't work quite as well as it could. That said, Army of Me into Hyper Ballad might be the best first two tracks of any record in 1995. Just absolutely amazing. And yeah, I think Björk is a dazzling artist on the brink of even bigger and better things. To me, this is just like just before the peak. So I know some people will be upset that I have it this low, but maintaining what I said about it in the Björk video, it's a four-star record and it has some amazing tunes on it.
Yeah, I am on number 17. I don't expect to find it on your list, but I think people will have it on theirs. I got Alanis Morissette with Jagged Little Pill. Maybe I'll make your list. Probably not. I can't remember. Yeah, you hate her. That's right. Okay, Jagged Little Pill. It is an album full of just incredible singles in my mind. I love You Ought to Know. It was the reason I bought my first tape. It was on the Grammy winners or Grammy nominees 1996. Just tape. I bought it. Played this in the car. My mom was not too pleased with the lyrics on that one, but I still love the album. And I think we all are sick of ironic and its lack of irony. But Hand in My Pocket's great. You Learn, fantastic. Head Over Feet's great. Even All I Really Want, which was like not even a real single, but I think that's pretty great. It's one of those albums that I like the non-singles. I think they're decent, but they're not really at the same level. And it goes on a little long as all 90s albums do, but I think, the songwriting, the fierceness in Alanis Morissette's lyrics, I think they're all pretty solid, all pretty good representation of the 90s and alt rock and sort of like a slick sound that also had some jagged edges to it. So I think it's a good, just a good album. And it's probably the only time I really like Glenn Ballard. Most of his stuff, he basically comes in and ruins everybody in my mind. But I think him and Alanis did some pretty solid work here, making it slick, but also a little, rough around the edges.
Well, I made you proud with my Ben Folds pick, only to break your heart by putting Wowie Zowie at number 16, Pavement.
It's not in the top 10. I'll live with that any day of the week.
According to my past self, this is my third favorite Pavement record, and probably would still be. It's a bit more expansive than the first two Pavement records. It's kind of messy and disjointed, a little bit like their White Album in that way. I don't think everything on it works completely. Again, another record carried by its better moments, but I love Rattled by the Rush, AT&T, Grave Architecture, and my second favorite Pavement song, Father to a Sister of Thought. So, yeah, some really strong stuff. Not my favorite Pavement record, and not every song's a winner, but there is enough good stuff here. I think you've got about, half an album's worth of the makings of the best Pavement album.
I mean, I obviously hate Pavement, but that album's not even in my bottom 10 on the year. So shows you how crappy this year was. There's some just dogs down at the bottom. From some pretty good artists too. It's kind of funny. A lot of good artists had some really bad albums, like Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and Fleetwood Mac and a bunch of other people. So we will not mention them. But anyway, my 16, go with another genre I don't really like that much, and I don't talk about it much, but every once in a while, I feel like the best of the best rise, the cream of the crop always rise to the top. And I got Symbolic by Death at number 16. And there's just something a little bit different about Death. I dug their 98 album, Sound of Perseverance. And this one, it's just, I don't know if it's just the vocals themselves. Obviously, I like the music part of it. Like Chuck Schuldiner, I don't know how to say his name, um, was an incredible guitar player, just incredibly technically precise, but not in like an overly like unlistenable way. Like it's got like this just flair and verve and feel that a lot of really technical players don't have, and it just feels more organic and emotional. Um, so musically, it's brilliant. Vocally is always my, that's the crux that I have to get over when I'm talking about death metal and listening to it and getting into the genre. And there's just something a little bit less abrasive about the way he sings. It's not, maybe it's less like barky and more, I don't even know how to explain it or describe it, but it's just not, it doesn't hurt your ears as much to listen to it. He kind of like has almost a melody, a melodic aspect to the death metal kind of, normal, yelling, barking vocals. It's just not, it doesn't hurt my ears like many do. So for whatever reason, Death probably going to always be my favorite death metal artist. And I haven't heard all their albums, but Symbolic and Sound of Perseverance, both in my top 25s for the years. Both very good albums. So I don't know. I guess Death is the only, foray into that genre for me, but it's a very good album. It's another one where even if you don't like death metal, it's probably worth listening to because you'll pick up at least something from the guitars and the music itself.
My number 15, this is where I have Osmosis. And I think, based on what you said about it, I think I probably like it even more than you do. I think I like it more than No More Tears, which is a hot take as far as like 90s Aussie goes. And we'll get to it, but if it wasn't for the one flaw I have with this record, it would be a contender for my favorite Ozzy solo record. This is another one that I had at the time. I got this on the strength of Just Want You and See You on the Other Side. Those songs got played on the radio a ton back then, and then they just like I haven't heard those on the radio in years, but they used to get played all the time, and I love those songs. So yeah, it was like kind of like Tragic Kingdom, returning to an old friend. A bunch of songs that I used to listen to a ton and haven't heard in a long, long time. I wasn't sure how it would hold up, but I really enjoyed it. Ozzy's melodies on this record are so good. Like you can tell that he loves the Beatles on this record. Like he is just singing so melodically, and something about like I just want you and the lyrics to that, there are no unwinnable wars, all this kind of stuff feels very reminiscent of All You Need Is Love and the kind of lyrical concept and construct of those songs. And yeah, I think it's one of his more consistent records in that regard. I think all of the songs have really strong melodies. Ghost Behind My Eyes is maybe my favorite Ozzy solo song overall. I think that chorus is incredible, and the way it lifts out of the verses is just so damn catchy. And yeah, I think his voice sounds incredible here too. It's maybe the last Ozzy solo record before the decline of his voice begins. Like it's not terrible on the next couple, but it starts to go downhill after this a bit. But I think he still sounds really good here. Zach Wild is on fire on this record. I think his playing is great. There's a lot of really cool guitar tones and like chorusy things and phaser things. Like you think of him as just like heavy distortion and pinch harmonics, but like there's a pretty like broad palette he's playing with as far as guitar tones on this record. The problem is the length of the record, and it's not that I would want any songs to be cut. I think just every single song could be about 2 minutes shorter. Like it's like they recorded like 20 extra choruses on the end of each song and like planned on fading it, and then like they forgot to tell the engineer to fade it, and so like the outro choruses go on and on and on forever on every track. And yeah, that is just the one flaw of this record. Otherwise, I think it is one of Ozzy's best. And I would put it neck and neck with Blizzard of Oz if not for that. But
Wow.
I got to give the edge to Blizzard of Oz, but I still think this is a great record, an underrated record, especially like where it falls in the timeline. I don't think enough people give it credit. I think maybe people look at it as like the beginning of the downfall, but I think that happens after it.
Wow. Wow. A stirring defense of Osmosis from Jason. We probably need to do an Ozzy Osbourne deep dive at this point. Could be some interesting material there if that's your top, near the top there. Very interesting. Well, here's another band you hate. I got Red Hot Chili Peppers, One Hot Minute, and my hot take might be that this is my favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers album. I don't know that for sure, and I really don't feel like listening to like 15 Red Hot Chili Peppers albums in a row, or however many they have at this point. But I like Dave Navarro, and I like him on this album. And I know that's anathema to Chili Peppers fans, but he just has a much more melodic approach to playing all his riffs. You know, they're still big and heavy often, but I don't know. Maybe it's just that he was also integrated in the band and writing with them. But there's just less of that like kind of dorky white boy funk tendencies of Anthony Kiedis, Flea, and Chad Smith that leak into the music. Like it's still there, it's still funky, um, but it just seems like a little more, down to earth and a little more reined in compared to like Blood Sugar or Sex Magic. Like I still think there's, good metal kind of funk tunes on here like Warped, Walkabout, here, One Hot Minute. But I also think, the old version of Red Hot Chili Peppers couldn't do a song like Aeroplane. I think My Friends is a very good ballad. I think Tearjerker is another kind of good, you know, pretty song, nice lyrics, good concept. I think P, which is the minute 46 song where Flea is just kind of hitting the one note, is pretty hilarious, pretty much a hoot. And I don't know, I think Kiedis is just a little less annoying on this. There's a little less rapping, a little more singing. I think it's just an easier pill to swallow. And yeah, maybe again, I'm looking at my choices here, and they're all kind of like middle of the road. And I don't know, maybe I just like the tone down a little bit. Like I like that kind of right in the middle, the sweet spot. And I don't know, I think this album too long. It's too long. The last three tracks just don't need to be there. But I think it's a pretty good example of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I know it disappointed everybody and critics didn't like it, but it gets all the just right in that sweet spot for me between all the different sort of you know strands that are being pulled by the Chili Peppers. This one just lands right in that sweet middle.
Well, I don't like that made your list, but I do like the idea of the Navarro album being the best they ever did. So I'll give you that. Number 14 for me is a band that I seem to like more than most people, and that is Space Hog and their album Resident Alien. I think a very underrated 90s band. They were kind of bringing glam and lightness and humor to an era when everything had to be dark and heavy. And I like the follow-up record to this record even more, the Chinese album. But I think In the Meantime is one of the best rock singles of the entire decade of the 90s. Cruel to Be Kind, I think, is a great kind of power chord riff rocker song. It reminds me a little of like Stone in Love or like Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow, those type of songs. Last Dictator's fun. Candyman is really campy, and Royston Langdon has some of the craziest deliveries of lines of any singer I've ever heard. Just injecting vowels into words where you could not even imagine them being, and it's awesome. And I love that kind of like over the top showmanship kind of performance of these songs. So Yeah, they're a cool band, interesting band. Didn't last long, didn't make a lot of records, but good enough to marry Liv Tyler. So
That's got to count for something, right?
you would think.
My number 14, you spoke about it already, but I have Bjork, with Post. My number 14, and I agree mostly with what you said. I think it's a very cool album. I think it opens incredibly, obviously, with Army Me and Hyper Ballad. I think it's just killer 1-2 punch. And I think it is it's not as good as Homogenic. Let's just get that out of the way. That was her masterpiece. But there's something just really cool about her, about this album, about how out there she was, just completely doing her own thing. Very eclectic. I think it has a great timeless sound. I think it's aged very well, which you can't always say that about 90s stuff, but I think it sounds really cool, and not, just completely out of date. She worked with the Massive Attack guys, Tricky, and them just kind of expand her sound and add like that extra element, the electronic element. And it's just a really cool mix of the arty world, the alternative world. It's weird. Like she'll throw in that, the show tune kind of. It's oh so quiet, the big band kind of flair just in the middle of it. And that's the kind of thing that I really dig. That just kind of out of nowhere, just, I'm gonna cover a Bert Weisfeld and Hans Lang song in the middle of my album, That's very cool. And she's got a great voice and all that jazz. And I don't like her as much as many people do, but after we did the Björk deep dive, I just couldn't deny how talented and interesting she was. So it's good that it's 14th on my list. That's a very good showing for an artist like her.
Number 13 for me, I have Faithless Street by Whiskey Town, the album that introduced the world to David Ryan Adams, a scrappier singer here than he would later be, but I think that serves the band pretty well on this record. Obviously, my relationship with Ryan Adams is a bit complicated at this point. I was a huge fan, and then, the allegations, and I went through this period of like not really wanting to listen to him or talk about him on the channel, especially. But now, whatever. Um, I think listening to his music is still not anywhere near what it once was for me, but I can appreciate some of it again. The level of writing on this record, nowhere near what it would become on the next records by Whiskey Town or on his solo material. It's, a little less fully formed, but I think the band has a lot of energy and the performances are strong enough that it lifts very good songs into some great recordings. So, yeah, Drank Like a River is awesome. Hard Luck Story is a great song. They recorded it apparently like minutes after writing it. They just like wrote it and immediately hit record and recorded it, and that's the version on the record. And they did the whole thing in like a week and a half. So it's very like tossed together live in the studio, very minimal overdubs, and yeah, it works. It's a cool record.
Okay. My number, where are we at here? 13. We're about halfway through. And I'm gonna go with little Mariah Carey because I don't know. Again, this year I was struggling to find a bunch of albums that I liked. And so I don't know. Daydream just is the pinnacle of pop for this year. I usually like to go for the best of each genre, and I don't think there's anything better from the pop sphere than Daydream. Um, it's probably one of the best pop albums of the whole decade, actually. It's kind of a weird decade for pop. Very singles heavy. And there's some great singles here. Fantasy, Always Be My Baby. One Sweet Day, which was the longest number one in history until a couple years ago. A pretty good cover of Open Arms by Journey. And, Mariah, she's got a great voice, obviously. This one, she took over production and kind of the direction of the album, so it has a little more of the urban feel to it, which would culminate a lot more fully her next album, Butterfly. But it's a little less cheesy, a little less hokey, a little less adult contemporary than her previous albums. She's working with like Jermaine Dupri here, so it's got a little more of that, street, very much in quotes there, little R&B direction, and I thought that was a good move. It's a little grittier, not as corny, and just more consistent than anything she had done before. So, good move by her, taking over the reins, getting rid of her deadbeat ex-husband, whatever his name was. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised at how well the whole thing held up. So, kudos to Mariah for this, for Daydream.
My number 12 is the self-titled album from Ron Sexsmith. He released an independent album called Grand Opera Lane. I think it was in 1991, and then he signed to Interscope and put this record out. So this is like some people consider it his debut. This is like his introduction to the world at large. And Ron is just like an artist that kind of like exists outside of time for me, or like if anything, he should be like, one of the great songwriters of the 70s, but like born too late. Reminds me of like Jimmy Webb, Paul Williams, Harry Nilsson, and yeah, just kind of like came along at the wrong time. But he carries on that tradition. His voice is otherworldly. I think he has like one of the most amazing voices. And as far as like those songwriter guys go, like Harry Nilsson's probably the only one that bests him. I think his voice is right up there though. And yeah, there's a bunch of great songs here. Secret Heart is, I think, a brilliant and gorgeous song. And they're just like classic songs that, you could drop into any era and imagine other people having hits with them. And I just love that kind of writing. And if you don't know Ron Sexsmith, he's got a bunch of good albums. This is nowhere near his best. So I highly recommend.
I didn't listen to that one. I kept meaning to. I never did. Bad on me. Don't repeat my mistakes. Maybe we could have slotted in instead of Mariah Carey or something. My number 12, go with an album I like. It's a disappointment though, a little bit. Blur, The Great Escape. This was, they were locked in the big battle with Oasis in 95, and it seemed like Blur was going to get the upper hand. Country House, the battle of Britpop between Country House and I don't even know what Oasis had. Roll With It maybe as their first single. And Country House won. It sold more, and the press just bathed kudos upon The Great Escape when it came out. And then it turned out people liked Oasis more, and Q actually retracted or they apologized for their 5-star review for The Great Escape after like Oasis kind of just took the Britpop crown and ran away with it. So it's one of those albums just like immediately got backlash, and I kind of see it like it's a good album. It's got some great songs, Stereotypes, Country House, Charmless Man, The Universal's great. But considering what it came after with Park Life, my favorite album, 94, um, and Modern Times, Modern Life is Rubbish, it's just a step down. There's a lot of filler. The songs just aren't quite as incisive, not quite as witty. The music doesn't feel as like urgent and necessary as they did, even as soon as the year before. And they kind of go in the lo-fi direction, more alternative rock with their next album. So this is kind of the end of Britpop for them. But I don't know. I want to like this album more than I do, just because I love some of the singles. But I listened to it a couple of times, and it dropped on my list a good 4 or 5 spots. So I don't know. I wouldn't like retract my review of them before, and I probably said nicer things about it in our Blur deep dive, but. Yeah, this one they're reaching a little bit. They're a little fat and happy, I think. So it suffers a little bit musically, but still a fun record worth checking out.
My number 11 is Wreck Your Life by the Old 97s. This is their second album as well, but like Ron Sexsmith, this is them moving up to Bloodshot Records after their Hitchhike to Rome album. So this, I think, is the record that introduced them to a wider audience in a lot of ways as well. Compared to Whiskey Town in 95, as far as like old country bands go, this is just like a well-oiled machine. The band is loose and rollicking, but extremely together. Rhett Miller's writing, I don't know if it was ever better, maybe Too Far to Care, but just in this era, he's just writing some of the best, like most clever lyrics of his career. The production is perfect for what it is. Philip Peoples just relentless train beats on the drums just make this record feel like it's about to go off the tracks. That gives it a sense of danger. And yeah, Ken Bethé's guitar lines are all perfect. And yeah, I think they brought a little bit more alt to alt country than most of their contemporaries. And yeah, it's just a fun time.
All right, my number 11, all the way up to 11, I got Sueño Stereo by Soda Stereo, my favorite Argentinian rock band of all time. This is their last album. It, I don't know, people don't know the story, the history of Soda Stereo, but it kind of took from their 1990 album Canción Animal, and which was more kind of alternative rocking, a little more diverse, paired it up with Dynamo, which kind of started them going into shoegaze a little bit. Sueño Stereo kind of, splits the difference, a little bit of both sides. Also, some psychedelic Brit rock, all like Stone Roses, definitely in there. The album has just a really great, beautiful sound to it. Just a great production, a great sound, great tone on everything. I love Gustavo Cerati's voice. He's got just amazing range, amazing tone. He's got a great low end. Um, and he's just got like this timeless classic voice that, it doesn't matter that if you don't speak Spanish or don't understand it, like you get the emotion behind it all. Some great tunes on here. This album's usually found very high on the best, Argentinian rock albums, the best Latin rock albums, best non-English speaking rock albums of all time. And they are a band that, I don't know, I don't, I speak like 5 words of Spanish, but I don't know, there's something about them I think that you can get no matter what, that crosses the language barrier pretty easily. So if you're looking to sort of dip your toe into the world of Latin rock and non-English speaking music, Soda Stereo is definitely a band to, explore early on because I think everyone would be into them. Or almost everyone, not everyone, but the cool people.
All right, into the top 10 now, and I'm going to keep the alt country picks coming. I've got AM by Wilco, and I think AM among the greater Wilco catalog is an easy record to dismiss, but I think when you like kind of zoom out from Wilco and look at what else is going on in 95 and the other alt country bands of the time, I think it really stands out. There's just so many good songs here. And, comparing it side by side like that with other contemporaries, I think makes that kind of obvious. And, songs like I Must Be High and Box Full of Letters are still classics of the alt country genre. And songs like I Thought I Held You show Tweedy's emotional depth already on their first record, and it's unique in the catalog. It's as the only Wilco record to feature Brian Henneman on lead guitar. He was in the band Bottle Rockets, and I think his playing does give the record something a little different, makes it stand out in their catalog in a way. And at the time, a lot was made about the which record would do better, this or Trace after the breakup of Uncle Tupelo, and I haven't talked about Trace yet, so obviously, I think that one is the one. But you know, Wilco would go on to do much bigger and better things than Sunvolt, but uh, yeah, I think this record's excellent and underrated just because of who they are and what they went on to do, but should not be slept on.
Okay, that was one of my many, many almost four-star albums. I did not get a single old country album in my top 25. I'm sorry. But I did get a country album, and you already spoke about it because it's the best country album of the year, bar none. It's Gone by Dwight Yoakam. And you said it correctly when kind of mocking country fans for like being afraid of this album, I guess. Like he had this string of just like number ones, number tens, going back to his start in 1986. And somehow this is the album that like scared off country fans. And it's got like this much outside of traditional like normal country. Like there's a song that's kind of like a Tom Petty song. Like that's as far as it goes. There's a song, the last song on the album, very much like a classic, like late 50s, early 60s, like country ballad type. And there's a couple songs with the Rembrandts backing up Dwight on vocals. And like that's really as far outside of the bounds of normal country as it goes. And yet it kind of bombed. And I don't understand it because I love this album. It's my first 4.5 of the year. I was kind of blown away when I heard it during our Dwight deep dive, which I also loved. I think he's such an underrated, unheralded artist that, you know, should be up there with the very top of the all-time country artist list. Um, I just think there's a bunch of classic great songs on here. He does like a little bit of like soulful, almost like not quite R&B, but kind of going in that direction with nothing. One More Night, Pete Anderson plays sitar on it. So it's not, I mean, it's got like little hints outside the normal bounds of country. But all of these are like really classic, great sounding Dwight tunes. It's nothing like outlandish. It's just, pushing the boundaries a little bit. It's too much for country radio, but I think these songs are all great. And it's, yeah, to me, it's classic Dwight with like a little more, hint of pop and soul and, heartland rock and stuff like that. But nothing crazy. It's just a good old classic Dwight album.
My number nine is my last four-star album. It's real close to 4.5. It could get bumped up someday, but right now, 4 stars for Blonder and Blonder by the Muffs. And yeah, Kim Shattuck, the lead singer of this band, has one of the best rock voices ever. Her rock scream is so good. And yeah, this record and I think the Muffs in general are kind of like a stepping stone from 80s power pop to 90s pop punk. And they don't really exactly fit into either one of those categories, but it's just great hooky rock songs blasting at you with incredible intensity and a voice that sounds like Susanna Hoffs ran her vocal cords over a cheese grater. And I mean that in the best possible way. It is just like really badass and hooky and catchy and just a rock record that really sticks with me. I think it's awesome.
All right, my number nine. You also talked about this album already. I got Tragic Kingdom from No Doubt. This is, I think, a really great album. I think it's very fun, very frisky, incredibly well played. I love the bass lines on this album. I think the guitar is great. Um, Tom Dumont actually does some tapping on Tragic Kingdom, the title track at the end. It's really cool. Like, you have that really classical sounding solo on Don't Speak. And I don't know, I think they get sort of pigeonholed as a pop punk kind of ska band. But I think this album has a lot of depth to it, a lot of variety in the tunes. There's some ska, absolutely, but there's some, alt rock and a ballad like Don't Speak really stands out. Um, a song like The Climb, I think is really different and sort of like alternative sounding. And I don't know, people just kind of talk about the singles, which are all great. Spiderweb, Excuse Me, Mister, Just a Girl, Don't Speak, all excellent singles, but I think there's a lot more variety on it, and I think it gets maybe talked down upon a little bit because Gwen Stefani is such a, I don't know, loser now and so annoying. But back in the day, and maybe it was just an act, but she really, it felt like she fit into this world, and she was just like a really cool girl next door type, and then she blew it later. But I think on this album, everything comes together. I think the work of Gwen's brother, Eric, probably shouldn't go completely unnoticed. He played keys, and he has writing credits on a bunch of these songs as well. Some of my favorites, like The Climb. So I don't know. His disappearance, he quit after this album, probably played a role in their downfall because they would never be anywhere close to this good again. But Tragic Kingdom is just like a little oasis in the mid 90s. Yeah, very, very fun album. Very cool.
All right, up to 4.5 for me now for Soup by Blind Melon. And yeah, I think Blind Melon's a super cool, underrated band that didn't really fit into any of the early 90s rock categories very neatly. They could kind of hang with a bunch of different kinds of bands, or like if you're a radio programmer, you could maybe slot them in a bunch of different places. But maybe that's why they didn't take off or become bigger than they were because they didn't perfectly fit anywhere. Shannon Hoon's voice, I think, he sang backup on Don't Cry by Guns N' Roses. So he's got kind of like that hard rock voice. I think he sounds a little like Perry Farrell at times. So he's got that kind of voice. They are kind of alternative, but they also are like hippies. So they could also, fit in with like Blues Traveler or like jam bands. And their performance at Woodstock is amazing. But yeah, I think the fact that you can't like pinpoint exactly what they are is what makes them so cool and so interesting. And the great musicians, I think the guitar interplay between the two guitarists in this band is always really, really good. Great bass playing as well. Of course, Shannon's voice, I think, is just amazing. And, you talk about like all of the tragic deaths of rock stars, and he rarely comes up, but I think his death was a real shame, and I think this band could have done really, really interesting things had he lived. He died 2 months after this record came out, which kind of like killed the promotion, which I don't know if it was, destined to be a hit anyways. It wasn't getting great reviews. And, during those 2 months when he was alive, it wasn't taking off really. So who knows? Maybe they would have still been a one-hit wonder had he lived. But a thing that you wish you could know whether or not that is true or not. The record was produced and mixed by Andy Wallace. So, of course, it sounds great. He, of course, did Grace by Jeff Buckley. They seem totally unbothered by trying to follow up No Rain. Like it doesn't seem like they're trying to have another hit. They're just making really interesting music. He's singing about Ed Gein on a track. He's singing about Susan Smith who killed her kids by driving them into a lake. There's a song on here about bad breath. He's just singing about drug addiction and detoxing and like he's diving into all sorts of areas and like dark, weird subject matter and seems just like the band is just following their muse, and I think that's what makes this such an interesting record.
It should have had a better title than Soup. I feel like Soup is not a good name for that album.
Maybe, but the album cover is great.
A guy eating soup. My number eight. I imagine this will be in your top one, maybe two. I Should Cocoa by Supergrass. And I think this is the album that showed that Britpop, and this is like getting close to post Britpop, even though Britpop like was still in its heyday. But I feel like Supergrass is like a post Britpop band because they don't quite fit in with the other Britpop. This one is hectic and loud and punky and I think a little more fun than the other Britpop bands. The Oases and the Blurs and those likes. Not quite as beholden to like the 60s in Oasis as Oasis and Blur were. Here you get more of like the Buzzcocks and the Jam, and you get some Kinks and some Beatles and Stones, but like it's more fast or it's more frenzied. It's faster, a little more furious. You hear some like punk bass lines, like right off the bat, and I'd like to know. Caught by the Fuzz, just like total blast of energy. Um, but they also shift around a lot. Like there's a great sense of discovery on all these tracks. It's like what's the next song going to sound like? Because they definitely mix it up a lot and kind of leave you like wondering what this band is all about. The big hit was All Right, which is this really melodic, poppy, fun tune. So lots of variety. Um, and just a really good album. It's just the sounds of youth and energy and just kind of anything's kind of possible is what I get from this album. So yeah, it's a 4.5, number 8 on the year. I should Coco.
My number seven is Viva Dixie Submarine Transmission Plot by Sparkle Horse. I think Mark Linkous is one of the true geniuses of 90s alternative music. He was a tech and guitar tech and roadie for the band Cracker. And so a lot of this album ended up being recorded with members of the band Cracker, and it was produced by David Lowery of Cracker. And he started recording when David Lowery left for some tour or something and left him with like a 4 track or an 8 track recorder and just started recording some stuff on his own. He was inspired heavily by Tom Waits, and I think you can tell that, but I think very importantly, he's not trying to sound or be Tom Waits. There's some of that weirdness coming through, but it's, I think, a different approach to songwriting and recording, and something that you didn't really hear much at the time. Plus, I think there's just like so much emotional intensity in all of Mark's music. Sometimes it feels like he's just like ripping out his guts and handing them to you when you listen to his records. This was the debut record by Sparkle Horse. I don't think it's the best. I think the next couple are even better, but it is, yeah, the beginning of a very interesting career and yeah, just a tragic story all around. Ended up taking his own life. But if you don't know Sparkle Horse, definitely check them out, or don't if you're Joe.
I checked it out. I gave it a 3.5, but yeah, the Tom Waits thing, that's why I didn't like it that much. And I liked it. I don't quite get Sparkle Horse. I do get Prince, and that's my number 7, The Gold Experience, which I feel like it would be higher if I knew about The Gold Experience before the Prince deep dive, and I'd never listened to it, and phew, what a mistake that was. This just rules. This is his best 90s album, the best Prince album since Sign of the Times. And the best Prince album after that. There's nothing better than this. And it's one of those albums that kind of slipped through the cracks because he was being weird and he was no longer Prince. He was the unpronounceable symbol, the love symbol, and that was his name, the artist formerly known as Prince. So he didn't quite get like the full, like this is a genius level piece of work from one of our greatest, living composers. Um, and it was kind of released oddly. Like The Most Beautiful Girl in the World came out in 94 as the lead single, and it was incredibly successful. I think it was top 5. Um, and yet, you don't really hear about this album. I don't think I had heard it mentioned before, like the Prince dive. Kind of just, I don't know, always passed it by, but it is so good. It's got pieces of Prince from every era. Like it's dirty. It rocks harder than anything he did, really, since Purple Rain. Rocked harder than anything he did afterwards. Um, really great guitar work, some really cool solos, these squeaks and like shrieks and just noise and fuzz that all kind of comes together. The songs are super well composed. They're interesting. You have a song like "I Hate You," which kind of bounces around. Like there's no real long structure to it. There's no real chorus. It ends with like this 3 minute long courtroom cross examination that Prince is just kind of like talking and singing at the same time, and like it doesn't lose any momentum. Like the way it's conceived and him talking back and forth and answering questions from like the fake judge and everything, and yet it just builds this awesome tension and it explodes in this ridiculous guitar solo. It's just one of the highlights of his whole catalog, and it's an album where he's indulging in like every whim and fantasy, and yet it all just works. Songs Dolphin, Shy, Pussy Control, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. It's just, rap, kind of pop, rock, R&B, soul. All this stuff comes together and kind of against all odds because at this point, Prince just, there was no editing him. But here, really for the last time, everything just works, comes together, closes out with Gold, which is like a triumphant, Purple Rain-esque, just like I'm the greatest type tune, and he kills it all. It's a phenomenal album. It's 4.5 stars for me. It probably will get to five someday, but it's one that I've only known about its existence for like a year, so I gotta get into it. I gotta work my way up to five, but I feel like it'll be there eventually.
My number six is Clouds Taste Metallic. So this is the anti-Joe portion of my list.
Yeah.
Uh, by the Flaming Lips. This was like their chance to follow up their fluke hit She Don't Use Jelly and like really get the career rolling, and it just totally flopped. But it's brilliant. I think it's so good. Wayne, I think, really finds his voice here. He kind of like finds this unique perspective and way of writing that kind of becomes his signature style after years of making records and trying all sorts of different things. This feels like finding his footing on this one. Sonically, it's so adventurous. There's like these fuzzed out and just like blissful sounds, and they're able to make these like really ugly, what would normally be ugly sounds feel very musical and pleasing to the ear. You got some absolutely massive drum sounds, massive bass sounds, but they're able to like somehow find room for other things. I think it's just really well mixed and like almost in a way like you have to like preconceive in your mind what the mix is before you start recording these sounds because otherwise you would just like run out of frequencies. Just really creative, interesting, really well made, and just I think still like for as adventurous and weird as you might say it is in spots, it's just like really musical and I think highly listenable still. So, and that's always my favorite stuff is when it's like when you're going out on a limb, but it's still pop at its core. So, yeah, Clouds Taste Metallic by the Flaming Lips, excellent.
I think that was one of my favorite Flaming Lips albums. That was one of the few like mid 3.5 star, but I did not re-listen to that one for this deep dive. Um, my number six album I've really liked for a long time. These are the albums that I've known, I kind of grew up with, and not I didn't actually listen to them when they came out, but when I actually started getting into my music in 2000 to 2002-ish, these next six albums were all very important to me. Five out of six, actually. Number six, Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains. This is just one of the most hopeless, harrowing albums I think ever conceived. It is just the sound of death and, things falling apart. The band was barely hanging on. Lane Staley was just completely just stuck in a pit of drug addiction. Just barely hanging on, barely alive at this point. Um, and so Cantrell takes up more of the songwriting, more of the singing, kind of just, doing their best to get the album out there. And it makes Dirt seem, downright chipper, I think, in comparison. Um, I think Cantrell has the three best songs, Grind, Heaven Beside You, Over Now. Has some of the sound of Jar of Flies in it, more acoustic nature. Cantrell, experimenting with more of the acoustic guitars, stuff like that. And those arrangements are really the only like brightness on the record. The sound of Cantrell's acoustic is like a momentary like just maybe one ray of sunshine peeking through the fog and darkness. But I think it's a really interesting sounding album with the brightness of the acoustic and the way it kind of stands athwart the grim lyrics and the mournful, biting sustain of Cantrell's normal, electric sound. Just a ton of minor keys, and it is beautiful in a grim, sad way. Grind's a great, creepy, brooding opener. I think Staley still sounds pretty good as a vocalist, and the way that him and Cantrell harmonize is great. Um, and I just love the sound of them. I love the sound of Cantrell's guitar. Um, but there's no happy ending here. Over Now is just like a declaration of, this is over. The band's done. Um, and they were for until they came back without Staley after he passed in 2001. But this is not like a fun album. I really don't think is a good place to start if you're like trying to get on Alice in Chains. Maybe save this one for last. It's creepy and harrowing and sludgy and dark and just kind of, I don't know. It's a tough listen sometimes, but I do think it's a great record.
That's a good place for me to say that I finished the deep dive with 26 albums at 4 stars and up, and that was the one that did not make my top 25. My number five is an album by a one-hit wonder, and if you only know that hit, you are going to think this is a real weird pick. But I have Relish by Joan Osborne as my number five of the year, 4.5 stars. I know a lot of people really hate One of Us. I think it's good, but I can also understand hating it. And if that's the only song of hers that you know, then just trust me on this. You got to give this record a chance. I think it's super interesting. I think the songs are great. I think her vocals are incredible. It's just so good. I love every song on it. And I like her vocals so much that there was like a stretch of time in like the early 2000s where I considered her like one of my favorite female vocalists of all time, just based on this album. So many good songs, weird songs. It's a perfect balance of like earthy realness and like weird 90s production choices. And I think it just the balance of the two things, like you'll have like this beautiful like Hammond organ coming in, so like B3 organ, or just the guitar tones are very like country rock, Sheryl Crow, but then you've also got like these weird intros to songs and like strange exotic instruments coming in places, and it kind of keeps you on your toes. Saint Teresa, Right Hand Man, Pensacola, Spiderwebs, those songs, if you don't know them, would be the first ones I would check out. I think they're all incredible. She does a really cool cover of Man in the Long Black Coat by Bob Dylan that I think is really good. And yeah, she's just like, I don't know. I've listened to some of her later records and they don't have the magic spark of this, so I kind of understand why she came and went. And also that song was just like overplayed to death and people got sick of her. But at the same time, I think she got kind of a raw deal just by like overexposure and like the wrong song to be overexposed with. So yeah, I think the people that know this record enjoy it, but if you've never heard it and hate that One of Us, just listen to it anyways, and I think you'll dig it.
All right, my top five. We're going up to 5 stars for them. And my number five is going to be a bloated, just egotistical, just ridiculous album made by a band fronted by two brothers that everyone hated for a while, but I think they've just ingratiated themselves back into everyone's heart. I'm going with What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis, the Gallaghers, of course, the brothers in question. And it is just a monster record. It is a fantastic follow-up to Definitely Maybe because it takes everything about Definitely Maybe and just explodes that out of the box into something bigger, louder, more complex, more interesting, showing new sides of the band and new sounds and new influences. And you can kind of see why it was such a global phenomenon and why it still holds up to this day, as we can, safely now say that Oasis has gone back together and just, blowing up England as we speak, pretty much. I mean, definitely maybe is a good album. I like it a lot, but it's very like one note, very samey throughout for the most part. On this album, Oasis just expand their sound so much. They do things a little lighter. They get a little charming on She's Electric. They do the Beatles thing on Don't Look Back in Anger. They do the acoustic, kind of sensitive thing on Wonderwall. They do the epic closer with Champagne Supernova. Everything has a sing-along chorus. Everything is just like up to the nines, dialed in, just big sounding. And it kind of, it dominated the Britpop scene. It kind of chased Blur to get into Pavement and stupid stuff like that. And it also kind of left Oasis with nowhere to go because you can't really top an album like this. And we got Be Here Now, which was an even more bloated, just ridiculous mess. The sound of a band that had gone completely up its own ass, basically, is what Be Here Now is. But for a period of time with What's the Story, Morning Glory, I think they just hitting on all cylinders, just finding everything that was cool and interesting about British rock and roll in the mid 90s.
My number four is I Should Coco. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of Britpop, so I guess this isn't Britpop. But it's the same year that What's the Story came out, so how could it not be? I don't understand that, but whatever. Whether it is or isn't, I love Supergrass and probably my favorite band of the late 90s and early 2000s, potentially. I'd maybe have to think about that statement, but that might be true. This is not my favorite record of theirs, but it's an incredible debut, and especially considering their age, it's just unbelievable how good it is. It comes out of the gate so like raucous and like this punky energy coursing through all of the songs, and uh, it's really infectious, just like how much energy they have. But then I think the back half is where the record really shows its strength. Like they get into tunes like Sofa of My Lethargy and Time, and like you can see all of these other influences like bubbling under the surface and influences that would like really show themselves on future records. So yeah, I think this record only gets stronger as it goes along. The playing throughout is incredible. Mick and Danny don't get enough credit for how good of a rhythm section they are. They are so good. And Gaz has one of my favorite voices ever. It's just, it cuts through a mix and he just sounds so good. So, yeah, I Should Coco, incredible album, overshadowed by some other British albums this year, but this is my preferred. But actually, I have one more British record coming up.
Wow. Wonder what it could be. My number four is an album you talked about, one of your new albums, and that is Ben Folds 5 debut. And uh, I just love Ben Folds. I love him a lot. I love Ben Folds 5. I just think everything about him, the incredible levels of piano playing, incredible level of piano playing, he's just one of the best rock piano players, I think, just in music history. The way that, he just takes over a tune with his prodigious playing, the sweeping runs, and just the way he can like turn on a dime into something else. I think the playing is just unbelievably beautiful, and it's the perfect counterpoint to his own, style vocally, which is kind of like dry college rock. He's a huge smart ass. He's got that great acerbic wit. Reminds me of, Joe Jackson and Elvis Costello a little bit. Great character sketches. And I think the band itself, the five, that are actually two, Darren Jesse on drums is fantastic. Robert Sledge, his bass playing. One of the reasons I loved bass and picked it up as a kid, the way that his bass lines and Ben Folds' piano kind of weave in and out, and just a different sound, and just the amount of song that Robert Sledge has to carry with the bass playing just makes him have to play in a completely different way that I always found really cool, really melodic, really interesting. But he also plays really fast with these incredible runs and these, big octave leaps and everything. So it's just I don't know. I listened to Ben Folds pretty early on in my life. It was just one of those sounds. I played piano, Ben Folds played piano. I wanted to play bass. Robert Sledge plays bass amazing. It's just kind of one of those things that just fit my personality. So Ben Folds, love his stuff, but these first couple albums by him are always gonna be my favorites.
All right. So I don't know if I said, but Coco was 5 stars. I've got 4 5-star albums this year. Coco is solidly number four. The top three, though, it's tough. I struggled to get an order for these three. I struggled last time when we did the albums of the year series. The number three now was my number one. Then I'm going with Trace by Sunvolt at number three. Again, that could change any given day. These top three are all pretty neck and neck. Um, if you don't know who Sunvolt are, basically, there was a band called Uncle Tupelo in the earlier 90s that broke up and split into Wilco and Sunvolt. At the time, there was this like sort of almost on a much smaller scale, but like this kind of like Britpop rivalry that you saw with Oasis and Blur, and the media wondering which record would be better. And yeah, I think round one of that battle handily went to Sunvolt. It would be the only round they would win. But yeah, I think all throughout Uncle Tupelo, Jay Farrar was like more the primary songwriter, and Jeff Tweedy would like get the scraps or whatever. And he was, I almost think he was like the younger brother looking up to Jay throughout the whole time in Uncle Tupelo. And I think, in 1995, that's maybe still the case, although the distance between them is narrowing. But I think when you listen to the two records, AM and Trace, I think it just feels like Jay is a little more assured of his ability, and also maybe like a little more authentic and like steeped in folk tradition, and like really knows like the history of the music he's pulling from, whereas Jeff feels like he's starting from scratch in some ways, and maybe ultimately that led to more interesting things. But yeah, I think the songs here are just amazing. They just feel like America to me, or something like the open road. And his voice is maybe an acquired taste, but it works here for me really well. So yeah, if you don't know Trace, check it out.
All right, number three. Oof, this is a tough battle at the top for at two and three. I can't remember if this was my third or fourth or second or fifth. It was in my top five in the original 95 album of the year video. But it's third now, whatever it was then. And I got Melancholy and Infinite Sadness by Smashing Pumpkins at number three. And this is just such an ambitious masterwork by a guy that's, I don't know, kind of like Orson Welles-esque, that just doing his own thing, like doesn't care about what anyone else says. Like he is just singularly focused on his vision. And my gosh, it is a phenomenal vision. Just the singles alone, 1979, Tonight Tonight, Zero, Bullet with Butterfly Wings. Like that's ridiculous. Like that's more just incredible songs than a lot of bands will just release in their entire lives. Like those are incredible. That's not even including, something like 33 or Jelly Belly or, you know, Through the Eyes of Ruby is incredible. There's so many just unbelievable songs. Galapagos, Here's No Why. And it's just, the level of ambition required to make something so epic, so big, yet also have this intimate side. I don't know if anyone's done it since this album. I'm trying to think of like other just massive, like singular pieces of work. I mean, there are others, but I don't think, at least in the rock genre, anybody's really come close to this since. Um, it is so long. It is 2 hours long. And you look at like double albums from the 70s, which were like 80 minutes, just a brisk 80 minutes. This one is 120. It's basically like four albums from the 70s. And I can't not say that there's like maybe, a little bit of filler. Like there's some moments I'd probably whittle down and a song or two I'd take out. I could probably get it down to a lean 95, 100 minutes. Um, but I just think you know, the overall scope and the ambition, just cramming all of this stuff in here, pretty much making it all work, just over the top, but so fleshed out. I don't know. It's just like this pure, unabashed ego of Billy Corgan to do this album as your third album too. Like it's not like he was like, five, six, seven, 8 albums deep and just like, I gotta do something to get back. It's, he was basically still on the up and up and coming, and to put out something like this is pretty incredible. So it's an all-timer for me, but it's still only third here in 95 with Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
My number two is going to be The Bends by Radiohead. For a long time, this was my favorite Radiohead album. And then I went through this period where I was like kind of down on it a little bit more. I can't, I know, I'm pretty sure when we redid the ranking of Radiohead albums, I'm pretty sure I took it out of the top spot. I might have even put it third. I can't remember exactly. But I'm pretty sure I had OK Computer number one that time. And I also didn't have it number one when we did albums of the year. And I think since that time period, it's coming back a little. Obviously, I'm not putting it number one here, but I think it's closer to number one now than it was then. And I also think it's probably my favorite Radiohead album at this moment. So yeah, I think I mean, we've talked about Radiohead a lot on this channel. It's just like I was saying earlier about Flaming Lips. I like records that kind of go out on a limb, take some chances sonically, but still at their core are very catchy and like pop filled. And for me, this is just like the perfect balance Radiohead album of those two worlds. And I think the growth from Pablo Honey to this is huge. I think these songs are all like, incredibly well constructed and like the arrangements are amazing and they sound great. But they're still earworms. And not to take anything away from OK Computer because I think that's amazing as well. But this is just more like the sweet spot for me as far as like stronger melodies go. So yeah, I love it. We've talked about it a lot. You can go watch those videos if you want to hear more about it, or listen to Joe talk about it pretty soon.
Very soon, but not yet, because I got Different Class by Pulp weaseling its way into my top two. And this is the only album in my top six here that I didn't know before this channel. I may have heard it like once in my life before this channel. Um, but I didn't really love it. I think I liked it. I thought it was okay, but I didn't quite get Jarvis Cocker yet. It took me a little while to really, you know, put my heart and soul into loving him, but I do now, and I do love Different Class. And every time I listen to it, I think I like it more and more to the point now that it's not that far behind my number one. And if there's any album that I want to listen to from this year, I think it would be Different Class. I think it's brilliant on basically every level. It's got a very unique sound for Brit pop. It just doesn't feel like it's really even from like the same universe as like the Blurs and the Oasises and even the Supergrasses. It's kind of like its own special thing. The uniquely Jarvis Cockerness of it. He's just got a totally different style, and I really like it. It reminds me kind of more classic artists, a little like Scott Walker and stuff like that. He's got, the charming Britishness of it. I love his lyrics. They're biting and mean and incisive and devastating, when he wants them to be, but also extremely sweet when he wants them to be. He just has such a great command of lyrics and when to be mean and when to be nice and when to just totally destroy someone. And I just think it's brilliant. I think the songs are wonderfully catchy as well. I think, very familiar hooks in Disco 2000, and probably the most Britpop he ever gets with Common People. But I think pretty much from top to bottom, you know, I love I love how mean he gets on something like Pencil Skirt and I Spy, and then he can be very just like I'm trying to think of the word for it, just very nice on a song like Underwear. We're very sort of like relatable with his subjects. That I don't know. I think he's just a special talent, and he really just dominates this album in a way that just I don't know. I guess it's mostly him, um, but he's such a talented guy that it totally works. I don't even think about the other members of the band, but I know they're good. They're all very good, but I still like everything I talk about is just Jarvis Cocker, Jarvis Cocker. But the whole band is great. They have a great sound. Kudos to them, but extra kudos to Jarvis Cocker.
All right. Well, my new number one for 1995 is Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. It's just so gargantuan. Um, I I don't know if there's a larger project by any artist where I like as many songs or to this degree. Um, would it be better as a 90-minute record? Maybe, but like I would legitimately struggle to figure out what to cut, even at 120 minutes, which is incredible. And like you said, I mean, you pretty much nailed my thoughts on it. Like the scope of it and the vision required to pull it off is just incredible. And like everything down to the artwork, the packaging, it's all just like part of the same vision. And for like tracks that are so different, like you have these like sweeping strings and like beautiful ballads and songs with harps and stuff. And then you also have like metal songs that are just like crushingly heavy and they make sense. Like you can tell that it was all conceived together and it's not just like, oh, we got these songs and we got these songs and we'll throw them on the same album. That is not what it is. So yeah, just an unbelievable feat. So yeah, just I mean, pound for pound, a lot of pounds of good music. So yeah, Melancholy is my album of the year right now.
Very good, very nice. What your original 95 winner was Trace, right?
Yeah, it was Trace. And
Like
then I think the
we
rest of my top five was the Bends, Melancholy, I Should Coco, and AM, which fell to 10.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we're heading in the right direction there. I like that. My number one is obviously the Bends because I consider it the pinnacle of 90s alternative rock and pretty much anything, outside of grunge, which, 10 might battle it for first place of my favorite 90s albums, maybe like Angel Dust by Faith No More would be up there too. But for me, the Bends just sounds the best. It has unbelievable hooks and unbelievable melodies and catchy songs that I have not forgotten since the day I listened to the album. And there's not a lot of albums with 12 songs where like I have such a vivid like memory of how they all sound and the way they move and build and fall than this one. It's just the first time I heard it, I got it out of the library on CD, and I think it wasn't until like 2000 because it was after Kid A that I finally heard this one. And it's just like from that moment on, 25 years later, all these songs sound as just relevant and powerful as they did back then. It's my favorite Radiohead album. It's one of my favorite albums of the 90s of all time. It gets not the respect it deserves because somehow I feel like it sounds like too easy, like just too like natural. And the growth from Pablo Honey to this, just across the board, everyone got a million times better. And I like Pablo Honey, but this just, it's perfectly crafted. It's wonderfully performed. It pushes boundaries enough, and then it perfects the ones that were already established, and set the scene for something even more experimental like OK Computer. Um, but to me, that these are just the best songs. As cool as OK Computer sounds and as you know forward facing and futuristic and edgy as Kid A, just nothing they ever did after this sounds as good. Tom York never sounds as good as he does on Fake Plastic Trees ever again. I don't think Johnny Greenwood's guitar ever sounds quite as good as it does on the Bends and Just. And, you know, I think across the board, this is just their best, most recognizable, most timeless tunes right here on the Bends. And even though I hate the cover, it is my favorite album of 1995.
Right. Well, there you have it. Those are our favorite albums of 1995. Check back to the channel. We'll also have our top 25 favorite songs coming up shortly. And like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, drop your own list in the comments, as well as tell us what you think of our list. And then check the video description for links to our record label, our Patreon, our merch, our social media stuff. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.